BBC has written some articles on this. Google is going full force into looking at unconscious bias as a foundational course for all of their Googlers to improve their results for the business, because the unconscious bias really impacts all of us in a very meaningful way. So if you don't think you have biases, then you might not be a human being or part of the planet, because we all have them. And we're going to talk about removing some of the guilt around some of that, and separating the difference between bias, prejudice, generalizations, and some of these other things. Be prepared to practice what you've learned. I'm a big believer in now. Now is the time. Not next week, not next month, now. Practice when it doesn't matter. Practice at the farmer's market. Sometimes we hear the word implicit bias, unconscious bias. You've had training before on emotional intelligence. Self-awareness is one of the key topics, along with other awareness and managing your relationships. But this, knowing about your unconscious bias, is key. And I like to layer in emotional intelligence training with the unconscious bias training. How many of us rely on our gut? I do. It is important to me. I value my gut. I go with my gut a lot, and a lot of times it serves me very well. However, we're going to talk about today why going with your gut doesn't always end with the best outcome. So what we know about the brain is that 99.99, not 99, not 99.9, 99.99% of our actions are unconscious. We're not even thinking about them, because really, how long do you need to have your hand on a fire to take it away, to know that I'm burning myself, or if there's somebody coming at you with a closed fist, to back out of the way? You don't really want to process that. You want to have an unconscious response, and that serves us really, really well for the most part. It helps us to survive. Perspective is a really interesting thing. Perspective is uniquely dependent on where you sit, how you process, and your past experience, right? And in this case, you had no past experience to help you out here. So this is all just about, your visual awareness. If you are looking for something and you are conditioned to look for that thing, much like the police officers in Baltimore, much like police officers all around the world, we're impacted so much by all these micro messages about people, even about ourselves, and we'll get into that later. You're going to miss a lot. I'm going to conduct the rest of this entire meeting with a British accent. Perhaps you'll listen, perhaps you'll think I'm brilliant, and that I know what I'm talking about. All right? So this is not stereotypes, it's not generalizations, it's not active bias, because there is active bias. I don't like you. I know why I don't like you. You're a woman, you have different religious beliefs than I do, you have different, orientation or whatever. I'm not into feeling you, I'm not going to be involved with you. I know that I have these prejudices and these biases, and I'm going to consciously make a decision not to engage with you. That's different. This is unconscious. And you're generally not even aware that you're doing it, whether you're crossing the street, clutching your bag, you're hyperventilating out of fear with being trapped with somebody in an elevator who may even smell different. Like I said, there are all these pieces of information. And the other thing is, your biases may go against every grain of who you are. When we're talking about unconscious bias in the workplace, products that you might be putting out, any visuals, I see all the time when I look at different websites, whether they're corporate or company websites, I always see, a blonde, fair-haired kid or family, something on a website, when, no offense to the blondes in the room, bottled or natural, they're the minority of the population of the entire world. And when and nobody's thinking consciously, hey, most of the people that I'm serving don't look like this, or you have a redheaded kid, which is even more over here. People aren't consciously saying, I'm only going to put men on my website in doctor suits, or I'm only going to put Caucasian children on this website for kids. But it is something that the more you're aware of it, goes into your thought process. All attorneys in California must, and most states, must take at least one elimination of bias course per cycle. So this course that I provide for U.S. attorneys, if anyone is an attorney in the room and needs bar credit, I'm happy to give you some. And I'm going to ask you all to do this. Test your biases. This is the first step towards making sure that you're aware of what's going on. Harvard has something called Implicit, it's a Harvard Implicit Bias Test. This is an assessment that you do on your own. It's completely anonymous. You may have to submit your email address, I don't remember, but if you go to my website, firstimpressionrx.com, I tried to highlight everything in red that's not on there. Firstimpressionrx.com, click on my services button, and you go down and click on the unconscious bias button. It will take you right to their website, and you can test things like male-female bias, weight bias, race bias, and race bias for all of us tends to be the heaviest one. And so Harvard puts this out, and they collect this information and put out studies on what they get from people. But it's really, really interesting. And at the end, you get an assessment on your blind spots. Not your weaknesses, just your blind spots, so that you're aware of them, so that you know, I'm picking people for my team. I'm working with a customer whose accent I don't understand, or I have this, person who's coming at me that I'm not really engaged with. It gives you an opportunity to test your own biases. And the microaggressions are very often led by our unconscious bias. Seeing someone who looks scary to you and you cross the street clutching your bag, that's a microaggression that people experience every day in this country and don't realize, the person who's doing it may not realize what they're doing or how it's having an impact on that person. And they were just walking to the store. I'm not saying don't protect yourself. Again, follow your gut. But in the workplace, these things happen all the time. Microaggressions could be not listening to someone's idea, repeating somebody else's idea. We do microaggressions on ourselves. We just want to be aware, just to raise the awareness a little bit, because it does impact our work. It impacts who we hire, who we decide to have on our teams. If you are working with people who are different than you are, take the time to learn about them. Ask them how they want to be treated. We talked about the platinum rule last time. Slow down. Slow it down. Process slowly so that your reactions don't end up being micro triggers for somebody else. If it's a micro affirmation, great. You're saying hello, you're trying to be warm and friendly. Fantastic. And adjust your style. Ask for feedback. But there is a lot out there to learn about this subject of implicit bias, and I hope you'll take the time to dig in a little bit deeper and learn more about yourselves and others in the process. Thank you so much.